Captain Gerald Morales stood at attention as the Everin diplomat Merrick sneered, "Carnivorous beast." Her words hung in the air, dripping with disdain. Gerald's jaw clenched, his mission to save humanity now hinging on changing the mind of this disgusted alien. Earth teetered on the brink of collapse. Overpopulation and resource depletion threatened human extinction. Humanity's salvation lay in the stars, specifically on Evora, a lush planet inhabited by technologically advanced herbivores. The Evora possessed terraforming capabilities that could rejuvenate Earth, but they viewed humans as aggressive barbarians unworthy of aid. Gerald led his team off the shuttle, acutely aware of the hostile stares from gathered Everins. Their tall, slender forms and luminescent skin contrasted sharply with the humans' stockier builds. Merrick approached, her movements graceful yet tense. "Follow me," she ordered, not bothering to hide her revulsion. The human delegation trailed behind Merrick through the towering spires of the Everin capital. Crystalline structures pulsed with energy, a testament to the aliens' technological prowess. Gerald marveled at the sight, knowing Earth's fate hung in the balance of this mission's success. Inside the council chambers, Gerald faced the Everin leaders. Their elongated faces remained impassive as he pleaded humanity's case. "We come seeking alliance and mutual benefit," Gerald explained, his voice steady despite the weight of billions of lives on his shoulders. The lead counselor's response was cold. "Your species consumes flesh. You wage war. You destroy your own world. Why should we aid such barbaric creatures?" Gerald's mind raced. Humanity needed this alliance. In a bold move, he proposed, "Let me live among you. I'll show you that humans are more than our base instincts. We are capable of growth, of peace, of coexistence." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. After tense deliberation, the council agreed. Merrick was assigned as Gerald's liaison, her face contorted with barely contained outrage. As Gerald settled into his new quarters, he overheard Merrick's voice from an adjacent room. "How can they expect me to work with this carnivorous beast? Humans are a plague, not potential allies." Gerald's fists clenched. He had to succeed. Earth's future depended on it. But more than that, he felt a new determination rising within him. He would prove to Merrick, to all Evorans, that humanity was worthy of respect and alliance. He began formulating a plan. Gerald would showcase human creativity, adaptability, and compassion. He'd demonstrate that humans could embrace new ideas and ways of living. Most importantly, he'd show Merrick that humans were capable of connection, even with those vastly different from themselves. As night fell on Evora, Gerald stared out at the alien landscape. The luminescent flora cast an ethereal glow across the terrain. In this moment of quiet beauty, he steeled himself for the challenge ahead. He would change Merrick's perception of humans, transforming her disgust into understanding, perhaps even pleasure in their company. The fate of Earth rested on his ability to bridge this vast cultural divide. With renewed resolve, Gerald prepared for his first full day on Evora. He would start tomorrow, chipping away at Merrick's prejudice, one interaction at a time. The path ahead was daunting, but Gerald was determined. He would show these herbivores that this carnivorous beast had the power to nurture, to heal, and to forge a bond that could save two worlds. As the first rays of Evora's twin suns filtered through the iridescent leaves outside his quarters, Gerald rose, his mind already racing with plans for the day ahead. He had spent the night strategizing, knowing that each interaction with Merrick and the other Everins was crucial to his mission's success. He found Merrick waiting for him outside, her tall form casting a long shadow across the crystalline pathway. Her face remained impassive, but Gerald detected a hint of curiosity in her large, almond-shaped eyes. "I will show you our daily rituals," Merrick said, her voice cool but less hostile than the day before. "Observe and learn, human." Gerald nodded, following her through the winding streets of the Everin capital. The city hummed with life, Everins gliding gracefully between towering structures that seemed to pulse with an inner light. As they walked, Gerald asked questions about everything he saw, from the strange fruits hanging from arching trees to the intricate patterns etched into the buildings. Merrick answered each query with growing enthusiasm, her initial reluctance giving way to a teacher's pride in her culture. These fruits are sacred to us, she explained, pointing to a cluster of shimmering, star-shaped produce. We harvest them only once a year, during the celestial alignment. Gerald's genuine interest seemed to catch Merrick off guard. As days passed, her icy demeanor began to thaw. She found herself explaining Everin customs with increasing detail, occasionally even smiling at Gerald's attempts to mimic their graceful movements. The annual harvest ceremony arrived, and Gerald saw an opportunity to prove his worth. As Everins gathered around the towering fruit trees, struggling to reach the highest branches, Gerald stepped forward. "Allow me," he said, approaching the tallest tree. With a powerful leap, he grabbed the lowest branch and began to climb. The Everins watched in awe as Gerald scaled the tree with ease, his muscular form a stark contrast to their slender builds. Marek's eyes widened as Gerald descended, his arms full of the precious star fruits. "Impressive," she admitted, a note of respect creeping into her voice. "Your strength serves a purpose beyond violence, it seems." As Gerald immersed himself in Everin culture, he couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. Something about the planet's behavior felt off. He spent his evenings poring over geological data and weather patterns, his military training kicking in as he noticed disturbing trends. "Marek," he said one morning, his voice urgent, "I need to speak with the council. I believe Evora is in danger." Marek frowned, leading Gerald to the council chambers. The Everin leaders listened to his warnings with skepticism, their faces a mixture of disbelief and condescension. "Our systems are infallible," the lead counselor stated. "Your primitive understanding of our world is misguided, human." Frustrated but undeterred, Gerald turned to Merrick. "Help me investigate further, please." Something in his eyes must have convinced her, for Merrick nodded. "There is a restricted area where our early warning systems are housed. We can examine them, though I doubt we'll find anything amiss." They slipped into the facility under cover of darkness. Gerald's trained eye immediately spotted flaws in the system's design. "Look," he pointed out to Marique, "these sensors are calibrated incorrectly. They're not detecting the buildup of tectonic pressure." Before Merrick could respond, the ground beneath them shuddered violently. Alarms blared as the facility's crystals pulsed an angry red. Gerald's prediction had come true. A massive earthquake was upon them. Chaos erupted in the streets as buildings swayed and cracked. The Everin defenses, designed to stabilize the city, failed spectacularly. Gerald sprang into action, his military training taking over. "Merrick, we need to evacuate that tower," he shouted, pointing to a listing crystal spire. "It's about to collapse." Together they raced into the building. Gerald coordinated the evacuation, his strong voice cutting through the panic. He lifted fallen debris, carried injured Everins to safety, and directed the flow of evacuees with calm efficiency. As they cleared the final floor, a violent tremor shook the building. Gerald saw a section of ceiling falling towards Merrick. Without hesitation, he threw himself at her, shielding her body with his own. Pain exploded across his back as the debris struck him, but Merrick remained unharmed. In the quake's aftermath, Gerald found himself in an Everin medical facility, his injuries being tended to by none other than Merrick herself. Her touch was gentle, almost reverent, as she applied a healing salve to his wounds. "You saved my life," Merrick said softly, "and countless others. Perhaps we have misjudged your kind, Gerald." As he recovered, Gerald proposed a solution to prevent future disasters. "Earth has advanced seismological technology," he explained to the council. "We could adapt it to Evora's unique geology, creating a more effective early warning system." The council, humbled by recent events, agreed. Merrick was assigned to work with Gerald on the project, a decision that pleased them both more than either cared to admit. As they collaborated on the seismological project, Gerald and Merrick found themselves spending increasingly long hours together. Their shared goal of protecting Evora from future disasters fostered a growing sense of camaraderie between them. One evening, as they pored over geological data, Merrick's hand brushed against Gerald's. She jerked back, startled by the unexpected warmth of his skin. Gerald looked up, his eyes meeting hers. For a moment, neither spoke. I apologize," Merrick said, her luminescent skin flushing a deeper shade of blue. "I didn't mean to." "It's all right," Gerald assured her, his voice soft. He hesitated, then added, "You know, when I first arrived here, I never imagined we'd be working side by side like this." Marek nodded, her large eyes studying him intently. "Nor did I. I must admit, Gerald, you've challenged many of my preconceptions about humans." Before Gerald could respond, an alarm blared through the facility. Red lights flashed as a computerized voice announced a system malfunction. Gerald sprang into action, his military training kicking in as he assessed the situation. "The new sensors are offline," he reported, fingers flying over the control panel. "This is the third failure this week." Marek frowned, her slender form tense with concern. These malfunctions are becoming too frequent to be coincidental. As they worked to restore the system, Gerald couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The pattern of failures seemed deliberate, targeted. He shared his suspicions with Marek, whose expression grew grave. "If someone is sabotaging our work," she said, her voice low, "it could jeopardize everything we've accomplished." Over the next few days, Gerald and Marek began a discreet investigation. They combed through system logs, analyzed failure patterns, and quietly observed their colleagues. Their search led them to a restricted section of the government complex, where they stumbled upon a shocking discovery. Hidden behind layers of security, they found a laboratory filled with strange, pulsating pods. Marek gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "These are biological incubators," she whispered, horror etched on her face. "But why would they be here?" Gerald approached one of the pods, his heart racing. Inside, he saw a swirling mass of microorganisms. A nearby computer displayed complex molecular structures that made his blood run cold. "These are weapons," he realized aloud. "Biological weapons designed to target human physiology." Marek shook her head in disbelief. "This can't be. Our people would never—" Her words were cut short by the sound of approaching footsteps. Gerald grabbed her arm, pulling her behind a large piece of equipment. They watched as Counselor Zarek entered the lab, accompanied by two other Everans. "The human delegation must be eliminated," Zarek declared, his voice filled with contempt. "Their presence threatens everything we've worked for. Once they're gone, we'll use their own crude technology against them, proving to all that humans are too dangerous to ally with." As Zarek and his companions left, Gerald and Marek exchanged looks of shock and commitment. They now understood the true extent of the danger they faced. "We need to warn the others," Gerald said, his mind already formulating a plan. "But we have to be careful. We don't know how deep this conspiracy goes." Marek nodded, her earlier reservations replaced by determination. "I'll help you, Gerald. What Zarek is doing goes against everything my people stand for." As they made their way back through the complex, alarms suddenly blared. A voice over the intercom announced a security breach, ordering all personnel to remain in place. Gerald's instincts kicked in. "They know we were there," he said, grabbing Marek's hand. "We need to move now." They raced through the corridors, evading security patrols. Gerald's combat training proved invaluable as he navigated them through the chaos. At one point, they found themselves cornered by a group of armed Everans. Without hesitation, Gerald engaged them, his human strength and agility taking the attackers by surprise. Marek watched in awe as Gerald disarmed and incapacitated the Everans without causing serious harm. His actions were precise, controlled, a far cry from the mindless violence she had once associated with humans. As they finally reached safety, Marek turned to Gerald, her expression a mix of gratitude and something deeper. "You saved me again," she said softly. I was wrong about you, about humans. You're not the beast I thought you were." Gerald met her gaze, seeing the change in her eyes. "We're not so different, Marek. We both want to protect our people, to do what's right." Their moment was interrupted by the sound of distant explosions. Smoke rose from the government district as Zarek's coup began in earnest. Gerald's expression hardened. "We need to gather our allies," he said, "human and Everan alike. This fight isn't just for Earth anymore, it's for the future of both our species." As they set off to rally their forces, Marek found herself seeing Gerald in a new light. His strength, intelligence, and compassion had not only challenged her beliefs, but had awakened feelings she never thought possible. As they faced the trials ahead, Merrick realized that her journey with this remarkable human was nowhere near the end. As they faced the trials ahead, Marek realized that her journey with this remarkable human was nowhere near its end. The chaos of Zarek's coup attempt had been quelled, but it left in its wake a dramatically altered political landscape on Evora. In the days that followed, Gerald and Merrick found themselves at the center of a whirlwind of change. The Everan Council, shaken by the betrayal within their ranks and impressed by the humans' role in thwarting the conspiracy, made a bold decision. They appointed Marek as the official ambassador to Earth, recognizing the need for stronger ties between their species. Gerald, for his part, was tasked with facilitating the cultural and technological exchange between humans and Everans. It was a role that suited him well, drawing on both his military background and his newfound understanding of Everan culture. As the dust settled, Gerald and Marek embarked on their first major assignment together, a comprehensive survey of potential sites for implementing human seismological technology across Evora. Their mission would take them to the far corners of the planet, from lush jungles to arid plains. On their third day in the field, as they set up monitoring equipment in a remote valley, the peaceful quiet was shattered by the sound of energy weapons. A group of Everan extremists, still loyal to Zarek's ideology, had ambushed their survey team. Gerald's instincts kicked in immediately. He pushed Marek behind a rock formation for cover, then swiftly assessed the situation. The attackers had the high ground, but their positions were exposed. "Stay down!" Gerald shouted to the rest of the team, a mix of humans and Everans. He moved with practiced efficiency, using the terrain to his advantage as he closed in on the extremists. Marek watched in awe as Gerald neutralized the threat with precision and restraint. His movements were fluid, almost graceful, as he disarmed and incapacitated the attackers without causing lasting harm. Within minutes, the skirmish was over. As the team regrouped, Marek approached Gerald. "That was remarkable," she said, her large eyes wide with admiration. "You protected us all, human and Everan alike." Gerald nodded, his expression serious. "It's what I'm trained to do. Are you all right?" Marek nodded, then hesitated. "Gerald, thank you." The incident only strengthened the bond between them, but as their mission continued, new challenges arose. Their physiological differences, once an abstract concept, became a daily reality. One evening, as they shared a meal in their mobile base camp, Gerald bit into a piece of synthesized protein. Marek watched him chew with a mixture of fascination and discomfort. "Does it not bother you?" she asked. "Consuming flesh, even if it's artificial?" Gerald paused, considering his words carefully. "I suppose it's just what I'm used to, but I understand why it might seem strange to you." They navigated these cultural hurdles with patience and understanding, but other differences proved more challenging. Gerald's circadian rhythm, attuned to Earth's 24-hour cycle, clashed with the Everan 30-hour day. Often, he found himself wide awake while the rest of the team slumbered, or struggling to stay alert during critical work hours. Despite these obstacles, their shared experiences brought them closer. One particularly stressful day, when a series of equipment malfunctions threatened to derail their progress, Gerald found Marek hunched over a malfunctioning sensor array, her frustration palpable. Without thinking, he placed a hand on her shoulder. "We'll figure it out," he said softly. Marek stiffened at his touch, then relaxed. A strange sensation coursed through her body, a tingling warmth she had never experienced before. She turned to face Gerald, her expression a mix of confusion and wonder. What was that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Gerald, realizing the impact of his gesture, quickly withdrew his hand. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable." "No," Marek said, reaching out to recapture his hand. "It wasn't uncomfortable. It was pleasant. We Everans, we don't typically touch like that." The moment passed, but its significance lingered. It opened up new avenues of understanding between them, challenging preconceptions on both sides about physical contact and intimacy. As news of their successful mission spread, along with reports of Gerald's heroic actions against the extremists, public opinion on Evora began to shift. The media, once wary of human intentions, now portrayed Gerald as a symbol of human nobility and strength. Holovid reports showed footage of him working alongside Everans, his powerful form a stark contrast to their slender builds, yet his actions speaking of cooperation rather than domination. Meanwhile, on Earth, the human government received reports of Gerald's successes in the improving relations with the Avorans. Recognizing the diplomatic opportunity, Earth's leaders began preparations for a historic state visit to Evora. As Gerald and Merrick returned from their survey mission, they were immediately thrust into the whirlwind of preparations for the Earth delegation's visit. They were tasked with organizing cultural exchange events that would showcase the best of both species. The pressure of their new responsibilities, combined with the growing scrutiny from both human and Everan society, created a tense atmosphere. Gerald and Merrick found themselves struggling to balance their professional duties with their deepening personal connection. One evening, as they worked late into the night finalizing plans for a joint art exhibition, Gerald noticed Merrick seemed distracted. "Is everything all right?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. Merrick hesitated, then spoke softly. "Gerald, what are we doing? This connection between us, is it even possible? Our worlds are so different." Gerald moved closer, his eyes meeting hers. "I don't have all the answers, Merrick, but I know that what we have, what we've built together, it matters, not just to us, but to the future of our people." Before Merrick could respond, Gerald suddenly stumbled, grabbing the edge of the desk for support. His breath came in short gasps, his face pale. "Gerald!" Merrick exclaimed, rushing to his side. "What's wrong?" He shook his head, trying to regain his composure. "I'm not sure. I've been feeling off lately. Probably just the stress of the preparations." But as Merrick helped him to a chair, they both knew it was more than that. Gerald's body was struggling to adapt to Evora's environment, a stark reminder of the challenges that lay ahead in their quest for interspecies cooperation. As the date of the Earth delegation's arrival drew near, Gerald and Merrick found themselves at a crossroads. The success of their relationship and the future of human-Everan cooperation hung in the balance. With the weight of two worlds on their shoulders, they prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead, together. As the date of the Earth delegation's arrival drew near, Gerald and Merrick found themselves caught in a whirlwind of activity. The pressure of their diplomatic responsibilities burdened immensely upon them, compounded by the growing complexity of their personal relationship. Gerald stood at the window of the Everan Council's main chamber, watching as final preparations were made for the human delegation's arrival. Merrick approached, her steps quiet on the polished floor. "The last security briefings are complete," she said, her voice tinged with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "We're as ready as we'll ever be." Gerald nodded, turning to face her. "Let's hope it's enough. This visit could change everything for both our species." As they conversed, a slight tremor shook the building. Objects on nearby desks rattled, and a few Everan officials looked up in surprise. Gerald frowned, his military instincts on high alert. "That's the third one this week," he noted, "and it wasn't on any of our prediction models." Merrick's large eyes widened with concern. Could there be a problem with the human seismological technology? Gerald shook his head, his expression grim. "I don't think so. Something doesn't feel right about this." Over the next few days, as the tremors continued, Gerald's suspicions grew. He spent hours poring over seismic data, comparing it with his knowledge of Everan geology and the capabilities of human technology. Late one night, as he and Merrick worked in their shared office, he slammed his hand on the desk in frustration. "These patterns," he said, gesturing to the holographic display, "they're too regular, too controlled. This isn't natural seismic activity." Merrick leaned in, her slender form casting a shadow over the display. "What are you suggesting?" Gerald met her gaze, his voice low and serious. "I think someone's manipulating the planet's tectonic activity, and I have a feeling I know who." Their investigation led them deep into Evora's vast information networks. Merrick used her diplomatic clearance to access restricted data, while Gerald applied his tactical analysis skills to piece together the puzzle. As they worked, the enormity of what they were uncovering became clear. "It's Zarek's people," Merrick whispered, her voice trembling. They're still out there, and they've been busy. Gerald nodded grimly. Underground facilities, advanced tech capable of triggering seismic events. They're planning something big, and I bet it's time to coincide with the Earth delegation's visit. As they formulated a plan to infiltrate the main facility and disable the seismic devices, Gerald's health took a sudden turn for the worse. During a briefing with Everin security officials, he collapsed, gasping for air. Merrick rushed to his side, panic evident in her voice. "Gerald, what's wrong?" He struggled to speak, his face pale and drawn. "Can't breathe. Muscles weak." As medical personnel attended to Gerald, Merrick realized the gravity of the situation. The human's body was struggling to adapt to Evora's environment, a stark reminder of the physiological barriers between their species. In the medical bay, Merrick watched as doctors worked to stabilize Gerald's condition. Her mind raced, torn between her duty to her people and her feelings for the human who had become so important to her. Making a decision that could change everything, Merrick slipped away from the medical bay. Using her diplomatic credentials, she accessed a highly restricted area of the Everin research facility. There, she found what she was looking for: a prototype medical treatment designed to help non-Everin species adapt to their planet's environment. Without hesitation, she took the experimental treatment and returned to Gerald's side. As the medical staff stepped away for a moment, Merrick quickly administered the prototype. "I hope this works," she whispered, her hand gently touching Gerald's. Within minutes, color returned to Gerald's face. His breathing stabilized and his eyes fluttered open. "Merrick," he said, his voice stronger than before. "What happened?" Before she could respond, Gerald sat up suddenly, his movements unnaturally quick. He looked at his hands in wonder, flexing his fingers. "I feel different, stronger." Merrick explained what she had done, her voice low to avoid being overheard. "I couldn't let you. I had to do something." Gerald nodded, understanding the risk she had taken. "Thank you," he said softly. Then his expression hardened with commitment. "We need to move. The delegation will be here soon, and we have a terrorist plot to stop." As they prepared for their covert mission to infiltrate the underground facility, Gerald tested his newfound abilities. His strength had increased dramatically, and his senses seemed sharper than ever. However, he noticed fluctuations in his enhanced state, moments where his power would surge or suddenly wane. "We'll have to be careful," he told Merrick as they geared up. "I'm not sure how long this enhancement will last or what the side effects might be." Merrick nodded, her expression a mix of concern and perseverance. "Whatever happens, we face it together." They made their way to the location of the hidden facility, using Merrick's knowledge of Everin security systems to bypass detection. As they descended into the underground complex, the air grew thick with tension. Suddenly, alarms blared. They had been detected. Gerald's enhanced senses picked up the sound of approaching guards. "Get ready," he whispered to Merrick. "This is where it gets interesting." The first wave of extremists rounded the corner, weapons drawn. Gerald moved with inhuman speed, disarming 2 guards before they could react. Merrick, utilizing her Everin agility, outmaneuvered another, using her diplomatic combat training to neutralize the threat. As they fought their way deeper into the facility, Gerald's enhanced abilities fluctuated wildly. One moment, he was lifting a massive piece of equipment to clear their path. The next, he was struggling to stand. Merrick, noticing his distress, placed a hand on his arm. "Focus, Gerald. Remember your training. Control your breathing." Her touch seemed to stabilize him, and Gerald nodded gratefully. Together they pushed on, their teamwork seamless despite the chaos around them. They finally reached the central control room where the seismic devices were operated. Inside, they found the leaders of the extremist faction, including a familiar face. "Counselor Vex," Merrick gasped, recognizing one of the senior members of the Everin government. Vex sneered, his hand hovering over a control panel. "You're too late. The sequence has already begun. When the Earth delegation arrives, they'll be greeted by the largest earthquake in Everin history. The alliance will crumble before it even begins." Gerald, his enhanced senses on high alert, noticed a subtle vibration in the floor. "Merrick," he said urgently, "we need to shut this down now." As Marek engaged with the control systems, attempting to abort the seismic sequence, Gerald faced off against Vex and his guards. The battle was intense, with Gerald pushing his enhanced abilities to their limit. In a crucial moment, as Gerald's powers began to falter, Marek called out to him, "Gerald, the beta frequency! Focus on the beta frequency!" Understanding dawned on Gerald's face. Drawing on his military training and Marek's insight into the prototype treatment, he managed to stabilize his enhanced state long enough to overpower the remaining guards. With the extremists subdued, Marek successfully aborted the seismic sequence. However, their victory was short-lived as a new alarm sounded. "Self-destruct sequence initiated," an automated voice announced. "Facility will detonate in 2 minutes." Gerald and Marek exchanged a look of purpose. "Time to go," Gerald said, grabbing Marek's hand. They raced through the collapsing facility, Gerald's enhanced strength allowing them to clear obstacles that would have otherwise trapped them. As the countdown reached its final seconds, they burst out of the underground complex into the open air of Evora. Behind them, the ground shook as the facility imploded, leaving nothing but a cloud of dust and debris. Gerald and Marek stood together, catching their breath, as the sound of approaching vehicles filled the air. A joint team of Everin security forces and the newly arrived human delegation surrounded them. Among the crowd, Gerald spotted familiar faces from Earth, their expressions a mix of shock and awe at the scene before them. As medical teams rushed to attend to Gerald, whose enhanced abilities were now rapidly fading, Marek stood by his side, her hand still in his. They had succeeded in their mission, but as they faced the approaching officials from both their worlds, they knew that their greatest challenges and opportunities were only just beginning. Were only just the start of a new chapter in their lives and the relationship between their two species. As the dust settled and the immediate crisis passed, Gerald found himself in an Everin medical facility, surrounded by a team of both human and Everin doctors. The experimental treatment Marek had administered continued to work its way through his system, causing unexpected changes to his physiology. Dr. Ilara, the chief Everin xenobiologist, studied the holographic readouts of Gerald's vital signs with fascination. "Remarkable," she muttered, her large eyes widening. "The human's cellular structure is adapting to our atmosphere at an unprecedented rate." Admiral Helena Reeves, who had arrived with the Earth delegation, stood at Gerald's bedside, her face a mask of concern and intrigue. "What exactly are we looking at here, Doctor?" Before Dr. Ilara could respond, Gerald's eyes fluttered open. He took a deep breath, filling his lungs with Everin air. To everyone's surprise, including his own, he felt no discomfort. "I can breathe," he said, his voice stronger than it had been in weeks. "And I can hear conversations 3 rooms away." Admiral Reeves leaned in, her voice low. "Gerald, what's happening to you?" He sat up, flexing his muscles experimentally. "I'm not entirely sure, Admiral, but whatever it is, I feel incredible." Over the next few days, Gerald's condition continued to evolve. His strength surpassed even the enhanced levels he'd experienced during the mission to stop the seismic attack. His senses sharpened to superhuman levels, allowing him to perceive the world in ways he'd never imagined. As word of Gerald's transformation spread, the medical facility became a hub of activity. Scientists from both species flocked to study this unprecedented case of human adaptation to an alien environment. Admiral Reeves recognized the potential of the situation immediately. In a closed-door meeting with the Everin High Council, she proposed a bold initiative. "What we're witnessing with Gerald is nothing short of revolutionary," she said, her voice resonating through the chamber. "I propose we establish a joint human Everin research program to study and replicate these effects. This could be the key to long-term human habitation on Evora and beyond." The council chamber erupted in a flurry of discussion. Some members saw the potential for strengthened alliance and scientific advancement, while others expressed concerns about the implications of such a program. Meanwhile, Marek found herself at the center of a growing controversy. The Everin Medical Ethics Board had launched an investigation into her unauthorized use of the prototype treatment on Gerald. As she stood before the board, Marek held her head high. "I understand the gravity of my actions," she said, her voice steady, but I stand by my decision. Not only did it save Gerald's life, but it has opened doors for our species that we never thought possible. The board members exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. The head of the board leaned forward. Ambassador Merrick, while your intentions may have been noble, the unauthorized use of experimental treatments on a foreign dignitary could have severe diplomatic repercussions. We will need time to deliberate on this matter. As Merrick left the hearing, she found Gerald waiting for her. His enhanced senses had allowed him to follow the proceedings from outside the chamber. You shouldn't have risked your career for me, he said softly, taking her hand. Merrick looked up at him, her large eyes filled with a mix of emotions. I would do it again in a heartbeat, she replied. Their moment was interrupted by the arrival of Admiral Reeves, her face grave. Gerald, Merrick, we need to talk, she said, gesturing for them to follow her to a secure room. Once inside, Reeves activated a privacy field. Gerald, your enhanced abilities have revealed something troubling. We believe there's a deeper conspiracy within the Everin government. Some council members may be working with off-world interests to sabotage our alliance. Gerald nodded, his enhanced senses having already picked up on subtle cues that something was amiss. I've noticed discrepancies in some of the council members' behavior. Micro-expressions, changes in heart rate when certain topics are discussed. Merrick's eyes widened. This could explain the recent increase in anti-human sentiment among certain factions, but who could be behind it? Reeves's expression hardened. That's what we need to find out. We're initiating a covert operation to expose these traitors, and we need your help. As they began to plan their next moves, alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. Security feeds showed a group of armed extremists storming the building. Gerald's enhanced hearing picked up their leader's voice. Find the human abomination and destroy their research. We cannot allow our world to be corrupted. He turned to Merrick and Reeves, his body tensing for action. They're here for me, and they're not going to stop until they've wiped out everything we've worked for. Merrick quickly accessed the facility's security systems on a nearby console. I can slow them down, but we need a plan. Admiral Reeves drew her sidearm. We defend this facility at all costs. The future of our alliance depends on it. As the sounds of combat drew nearer, Gerald, Merrick, and Reeves prepared to make their stand. The attack on the research facility had begun, and with it, a new chapter in the struggle for human-Everin cooperation. The outcome of this battle would shape the future of both species for generations to come. As the dust settled from the attack on the research facility, Gerald, Merrick, and Admiral Reeves found themselves thrust into the eye of a political storm. The Everin government, reeling from the exposure of corruption within its ranks, called for an emergency session to address the crisis. Gerald stood before a mirror in his temporary quarters, adjusting the formal attire provided for his testimony. His enhanced senses picked up the faintest tremor in his hands, a sign of the nervous energy coursing through him. The weight of responsibility pressed down on his shoulders as he prepared to face the Everin Council. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Admiral Reeves entered, her face a mask of commitment. Are you ready, Gerald? This hearing could change everything. Gerald nodded, taking a deep breath. As ready as I'll ever be, Admiral, but there's something you should know. He closed his eyes, focusing on his heightened awareness. The world around him seemed to sharpen, every detail coming into crystal clear focus. He could hear the rapid heartbeats of the guards outside, smell the subtle pheromones released by the Admiral's anxiety. My senses, Gerald explained, opening his eyes. They've reached a new level. I can detect things I never thought possible. Micro-expressions, changes in body chemistry. It's like I can see right through people. Admiral Reeves' eyes widened as she processed this information. This could be exactly what we need. Gerald, during the hearing, I want you to use this ability. Watch the council members closely. If you detect any signs of deception or hostility, give me a signal. We'll use this to our advantage. As they made their way to the council chamber, Gerald's mind raced with the implications of his newfound talent. The hallways bustled with activity, filled with a mix of Everin officials and human diplomats. He could sense the tension in the air, thick and palpable. Meanwhile, in another part of the government complex, Merrick stood before the disciplinary board, her head held high despite the weight of uncertainty pressing down on her. The head of the board, a stern-faced Everin named Kala, addressed her with a mix of disappointment and curiosity. Ambassador Merrick, while we cannot deny the positive outcomes of your actions, the unauthorized use of experimental treatments on a foreign dignitary is a serious breach of protocol. Until further notice, you are suspended from your ambassadorial duties. Merrick felt a pang of regret, but her voice remained steady as she responded. I understand and accept the consequences of my actions. However, I stand by my decision. The alliance between our peoples is too important to be jeopardized by inaction. As she left the hearing room, Merrick's mind was already racing with plans. She may have been suspended from official duties, but that wouldn't stop her from working behind the scenes. She had a network of loyal Everin contacts, and she intended to use them to gather intelligence on the remaining extremist factions. The Grand Council chamber buzzed with anticipation as Gerald took his place at the witness stand. Rows of Everin council members sat before him, their alien features a mix of curiosity, skepticism, and in some cases, barely concealed hostility. Admiral Reeves stood nearby, ready to lead the questioning. As Gerald began his testimony, recounting the attack on the research facility and the ongoing threats to the Human Everin Alliance, he focused his enhanced senses on the council members. He noticed a slight increase in heart rate from a council member to his left when he mentioned the extremist factions. Another council member's pheromones spiked with fear at the mention of off-world interests. Gerald caught Admiral Reeves's eye and gave a subtle nod towards the suspicious council members. The Admiral smoothly shifted her line of questioning, probing deeper into the areas that had triggered reactions. Counselor Zev, Reeves addressed one of the nervous-looking Everins, what can you tell us about the recent increase in funding for deep space communication arrays? Zev's eyes darted nervously. I'm not privy to that information, Admiral. Perhaps Counselor Tarek would be better suited to answer. Gerald's senses picked up on the lie immediately. He could hear Zev's heart racing, see the faint sheen of sweat forming on his brow. He signaled to Reeves again, who pressed harder. As the questioning continued, the web of lies began to unravel. Gerald's enhanced abilities allowed him to identify each deception, each half-truth, and Admiral Reeves skillfully used this information to corner the corrupt officials. Suddenly, Counselor Tarek, feeling the noose tightening, leapt from his seat and made a dash for the exit. Without thinking, Gerald vaulted over the witness stand, his body moving with inhuman speed and grace. In a blur of motion, he intercepted Tarek before he could reach the door, pinning him against the wall with ease. The chamber erupted in chaos. Cameras flashed, capturing the moment for all of Evora to see. Gerald's display of superhuman abilities sent shockwaves through the assembly and beyond. As security forces took Tarek into custody, Gerald became acutely aware of the mix of emotions flooding the room. Fear, awe, excitement. He could sense it all. He knew that this moment would change everything, not just for him, but for the future of human-Everin relations. In the midst of the commotion, Merrick slipped into the chamber, her eyes locking with Gerald's across the room. She held a data pad tightly against her chest, her expression a mix of triumph and urgency. Gerald knew instantly that she had discovered something crucial. As the council called for a recess to restore order, Gerald, Merrick, and Admiral Reeves huddled in a corner of the chamber. Merrick's voice was low and intense as she shared her findings. I've uncovered a link between the corrupt council members and a powerful interstellar corporation, she explained, showing them the data on her pad. This company, Galactic Reach Enterprises, has been manipulating events to keep humans and Everins at odds. They're after Evora's resources, and our alliance threatens their plans. Admiral Reeves' eyes narrowed as she processed this information. This is exactly what we needed. With this evidence, we can expose the entire conspiracy. As the recess ended and the council reconvened, Gerald felt a new sense of purpose. The pieces were falling into place, and he knew that what happened next would shape the future of both their species. With Merrick by his side and his enhanced abilities at the ready, he prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that the true test of their alliance was just beginning. As the council session adjourned, Gerald found himself thrust into a whirlwind of activity. The exposure of the conspiracy had set in motion a series of events that would reshape the future of human-Everin relations. In the weeks that followed, Gerald and Merrick became the focal point of intense media scrutiny. Their relationship, once a source of controversy, now symbolized the potential for interspecies cooperation. Cameras followed their every move as they worked tirelessly to solidify the alliance between their peoples. The announcement of a joint human-Everin expedition to a nearby planet captured the imagination of both species. Gerald and Merrick were selected to lead the mission, their unique experiences and abilities making them the ideal candidates. As the day of the launch approached, Gerald stood before a massive view screen in the Everin Space Center, watching the final preparations. The spacecraft, a marvel of combined human and Everin engineering, gleamed in the alien sunlight. Its sleek lines and advanced technology represented the best of both worlds. Merrick approached, her steps light despite the gravity of the moment. "Are you ready for this?" she asked, her large eyes searching his face. Gerald nodded, his enhanced senses picking up on the subtle changes in her body language. "As ready as I'll ever be. This is what we've been working towards, isn't it?" The launch day arrived with a flurry of activity. As Gerald boarded the ship, he felt a sense of anticipation coursing through his veins. The crew, a mix of humans and Everins, moved with purpose, each knowing their role in this historic mission. As the engines roared to life and the ship lifted off from Evera's surface, Gerald experienced a sudden, overwhelming surge in his enhanced abilities. The world around him seemed to expand, his senses stretching beyond the confines of the ship. He could perceive the very fabric of space around them, a tapestry of energy and potential. In this heightened state, Gerald detected a critical flaw in the ship's warp drive just moments before activation. Without hesitation, he sprinted towards the engine room, his body moving with inhuman speed. "Gerald, what's happening?" Merrick's voice crackled over the intercom, concern evident in her tone. "Warp drive malfunction," Gerald replied tersely, his focus entirely on the task at hand. He reached the engine room in seconds, assessing the situation with his enhanced senses. The warp core pulsed with scarcely controlled energy, its alignments off by mere fractions. Gerald knew that if they activated the drive in this state, the ship would be torn apart. Using his superhuman strength, Gerald began manually adjusting the warp core alignments. His hands moved with precision, making minute adjustments that no ordinary human or Everin could achieve. The radiation levels in the room spiked dangerously, but Gerald pushed on, his body absorbing lethal doses with each passing second. On the bridge, Merrick watched the readings with growing alarm. "Gerald, the radiation levels in the engine room are off the charts. You need to get out of there." Gerald's voice came back strained. "Almost done." With a final adjustment, the warp core stabilized. The ship's systems returned to normal, crisis averted. But as the immediate danger passed, Gerald felt his body beginning to react to the massive radiation exposure. He stumbled out of the engine room, his vision blurring. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was Merrick's face, her expression a mix of relief and terror. Medical teams rushed to treat Gerald as the ship stabilized in orbit around their target planet. Merrick stood by, watching helplessly as the medical staff worked feverishly to save him. To everyone's shock, Gerald's body began to change before their eyes. His unique physiology, further altered by the radiation exposure, started shifting between human and Everin characteristics. One moment his skin would take on the pale blue hue of an Everin, the next it would revert to his natural human tone. Merrick, drawing on her deep knowledge of both human and Everin biology, realized that Gerald's mind was struggling to cope with the rapid changes. His consciousness flickered between human and Everin thought patterns, threatening to tear his psyche apart. In a moment of desperate inspiration, Merrick made a decision. She placed her hands on Gerald's temples, initiating a mind meld, a rarely used Everin ability that allowed for the deepest form of mental connection. As their minds intertwined, Merrick was flooded with Gerald's memories and emotions. She experienced firsthand his unwavering commitment to peace between their species, his fears and hopes, and the depth of his feelings for her. Through sheer force of will, Marek used the connection to stabilize Gerald's fluctuating consciousness. She became an anchor, holding his mind steady as his body continued its metamorphosis. As the mind meld deepened, something unexpected occurred. The unique combination of Gerald's adapted physiology and Marek's ever-in abilities created a temporary psychic link not just between them, but with the planet below. Suddenly, they were aware of a vast alien consciousness spread throughout the planet's crust. It was a silicon-based life form, a collective intelligence just beginning to awaken to self-awareness. The revelation hit them both simultaneously. The planet they had come to colonize was already inhabited by a sentient species. As the mind meld faded and Gerald's conditions stabilized, Marek found herself forever changed by the experience. She had seen the universe through Gerald's eyes, felt his love for her, and understood the true meaning of their mission. With this newfound knowledge, Marek and Gerald knew they faced a crucial decision. The future of three species now hung in the balance, and the choices they made in the coming hours would shape the course of galactic history. As they prepared to address the crew and their superiors about their discovery, Gerald and Marek shared a look of understanding. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, as partners, as representatives of their species, and as protectors of a new form of life they had only just begun to understand.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.